Hey guys, DIY Maniac, John P here, working on the John Deere riding mower again. So what's this video about? Have you been out cutting your grass and your mower's making a strange noise, like a growling or a whirling sound? And you do some diagnosis. You turn the cutting blades on and off and you notice the noise only happens when the mower deck is engaged. Most likely, it's going to be your spindle bearings that have gone bad. And in my case, that's what it is. So we're going to look at the steps of diagnosing and how to change them. Follow along. As always, before we do anything, disconnect the battery, disconnect the spark plug. We want to ensure we're safe when we're working. If we want to diagnose that it is in fact a spindle bearing that's bad, and you don't want to go through the step of removing the mower deck to verify that, you can check while the deck is still on the mower. What you would do is you would remove the belt, and you could grab the pulley underneath this plastic shield and you could give it a spin. And it should spin relatively easy without too much resistance and without any noise, as you would hope a good bearing does. If you spin that upper pulley and you're getting kind of a crunchy sound, or it's very tight to turn, chances are that spindle bearing has failed and that's what's causing your noise. So if that's the case and that's what you're seeing, then the next step is we're going to go ahead and remove the mower deck from the machine itself. For the removal of the mower deck from the tractor, every brand may be different, but you're going to have some main anchoring points. Your adjusters, these lift levers, and the front lever as well. The way these are removed, the cotter pin is slid out, the washer removed, and then these anchoring points can be released and the deck allowed to sit on the ground. It's always easiest to have the mowing deck at its lowest level when unhooking these. Be careful, it's heavy, don't hurt yourself. Once you removed all the anchoring points with the cotter pins, the drive belt could be slipped off. On this machine, it's very simple. You bring it over the guard. This is basically keeps the belt in place. You bring it over on each side. And the belt is now free of the main drive pulley of the motor. The last connection point that needs to be removed is the cable that engages the mowing blades. That is done once again with a cotter pin pulled out, pull back on the cable and release it from this bracket. The other end of the cable is inserted into a lever on the, you could see the spring, and it hooks onto that lever with the pulley. You basically just lift up on it. As such, and pull it out to release it and let it sit on the mowing deck, and you can pull it out. Now that all the anchoring points and the engagement cable has been disconnected, we could slide the mowing deck out from underneath the tractor, and it's done as such. Just be careful of your cables that nothing's getting snagged. And you could slide it completely out, and that now gives us access to the top side of the mowing deck. Now that the mowing deck has been removed from underneath the tractor, we could go ahead and remove these guards, the pulley guard or belt guard. On this particular deck, there's 3 fasteners on each side that are held in by 10mm bolts. I'm going to go ahead and zip those out now. Now that the guards have been removed, we could start checking our spindles to see if they are in fact failed. Keeping in mind that when the mowing deck is not engaged, there's actually brakes that push onto the pulley. So if you try to spin it, it's going to give you some resistance. So the first thing you want to do is with one hand, push basically on this pulley. You're going to simulate as if you're engaging the mowing deck. So like this, you can see the little brake here. It disengages, and that happens on both sides. And this will allow you to spin the spindle and listen for noise. You could also check for play. This one has a bit of play. This one has a bit of play as well. spin them and see if there's a loud rumbling sound when you spin. So let's listen. I don't know how well it's coming across on the camera, but there's definitely a loud whirling sound coming from that bearing. If we spin the other one, much less. So it would definitely appear this is our culprit. But when it comes to the spindles, definitely, might as well just change them in pairs. You have two options when replacing the spindle. You could go through John Deere itself or the manufacturer of your mower, in my case, John Deere, or you go on Amazon for a fraction of the cost. Up to you. I'll let you make that call, but I'll definitely give you the part numbers of the Amazon parts that I went with and how much they cost. But to give you an example, one spindle at John Deere is 85 Canadian plus tax. I got two spindles off Amazon for $50 plus tax shipped. So you make your own judgment call. So the next step now is we're going to go ahead and remove these upper pulleys. I'll show you how that's done. Now we're ready to remove the upper pulley. On this particular deck, it's a 22 millimeter. You're going to take your impact, put it on, put your foot on the pulley to stop it from spinning, and zip off the nut. Keep the nut. The new spindle may not come with it. Release the brake. Upper pulley comes off. Put it aside. And we repeat on the opposite side. Foot on the pulley. Release the nut. Release the brake. And hopefully the pulley releases for us, and it does. Now those are off. Our next step is to make our lives a little bit easier. We're going to remove the cutting blades. For the removal of the cutting blade, an impact might not be strong enough because those are on there pretty tight. Get yourself a block of wood to act as a bracing to stop the blade from turning. In my case, 24 millimeter for that nut. Get yourself a good sized breaker bar and have at it. And she'll release. Once you get her loose, you could then take your impact and zip it off the rest of the way. I'll show you one blade, and the other one will just be a repeat, so I won't show you that. Your nut comes off. Keep in mind you have a washer as well. Keep them. New spindle may not come with them. Put them aside. And now your mowing blade comes off. And now's the time to get it sharpened since it's already off, or replace it if it's needed to be replaced. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one now. Now the final step to get the spindle off the mowing deck is there's 4 fasteners. On this particular deck, they're 10 millimeter each. I'm going to go ahead and zip off all 8. You don't need to keep these, as every single spindle I've seen comes with replacements, but always keep all your fasteners until you're sure you have new ones. And now all the spindle fasteners have been removed, and the spindles are now free of the mowing deck. So when we lift the deck up, the spindles should and will stay behind. We'll go now and lift up the mowing deck, leaving our 2 spindles on the side as such. And here's our 2 spindles, our old ones that we're going to be changing. Here we are with the new spindle. The brand I got off Amazon is 810 and is direct replacement spindle for the John Deere with the 42-inch mowing deck. However, always cross-reference to John Deere part number off the John Deere website. So in case you don't know, if you go on the John Deere website, you can put your model of tractor, get the John Deere part number, cross-reference that on Amazon. There were some complaints on Amazon for this part, people saying that the spindle nut that connects the blade to the spindle was not the right size. In my case, it is. It fits perfect. So keep that in mind. So the spindle comes here. We have the spindle itself with the greasable zert, like from factory. There's some protectors on the threaded portions. I like to see that. Protect those threads during transport. on both ends. It also comes with the new retaining nuts or bolts that secure the spindle to the mowing deck. You have to reuse your pulley nut for where the belt connects, and on the bottom reuse the nut and washer for the blade connects. So we're going to go ahead now and get this installed on the mowing deck. Now that we're ready to put the spindle into place, tilt the mowing deck up on its side to make it a little bit easier for yourself. You're going to insert it grease-zert up, so it's going to sit flush on that flange on the bottom of the deck. Keep in mind how you're going to orient that grease-zert. You want to make sure that, because you can put it in 4 different ways. If you think about it, it's a circle, depending how you bolt it in. You want that grease-zert to be accessible on the upside. So when you put it through and you line up your holes, take a look on the other side and make sure that once that pulley is on, you're going to be able to get your grease gun in there, and then rotate as needed to get it to a position where you feel the grease-zert will be the most accessible. So in my case, it's going to be right there. You're going to get a couple of your retaining bolts ready. They're a 13mm head, and you can put a couple of them in loosely just to hold the spindle in place. And then once you've done that, you could tilt the mowing deck or lay the mowing deck back down on the ground to make it a little bit easier to finish up the installation. So that's what I'm going to do right now. With the mowing deck back on the ground so it's easier to work, you could finish off tightening the bolts with your ratchet and the 13mm. And we'll tighten those up now. And you just want to get them good and snug. You don't want to over tighten them. The casting on the spindle is aluminum. You could easily strip the threads. So once the spindle has been secured into place with retaining bolts, we can put the pulley in. Once again, push back on the brake to give you room and slide your pulley down into place and get it seated. It can only fit one way and it locks into like a squared out pattern. And then you can release your brake. You then take your big upper nut and we're going to tighten this down with our socket, and we're going to make it very good and tight. Well guys, this side is done, so all that's left now is doing the other side. I'm not going to show you that. It's just basically a repeat of what you've already seen, and of course then installing the mower blades. Like I mentioned before, it's a good time maybe to think about sharpening them or replacing them if needed. Of course, what you're going to want to do is take your grease gun and give those grease-zerts a couple of hits with some grease. They do most likely come pre-greased from the factory, but it doesn't hurt to just double check that and give a little more. So that's pretty much how it's done, guys. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, definitely leave them down below and I'll do my best to reply. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Take care.